After eating lunch, Sadie goes outside with her friends to play for recess. A couple of them, including Sadie, decided to go play in the sandbox. While playing, Sadie notices the beautiful plants growing and wonders to herself, how do plants get their food since they can't move? She asks her friend Stella if she knows, but Stella doesn't and tells Sadie to ask their teacher when they get back from recess. "That's a good idea, Stella. Mrs. Erickson will know for sure," responds Sadie. So after recess was over, she remembered her conversation with Stella and went to ask the teacher before she began class again. "Excuse me, Mrs. Erickson," Sadie says, raising her hand from her seat. "Why, yes, Sadie," responds Mrs. Erickson. "I was wondering, how do plants eat?" asked Sadie. Then Mrs. Erickson said, "Most plants make their own food with a process called photosynthesis, sweetie." "Photo who?" responds Sadie. With a chuckle, Mrs. Erickson says she will explain further. After the rest of the class has settled down, Mrs. Erickson says, "Okay, class, I'm going to tell you a little story about photosynthesis." So then Mrs. Erickson begins. Our tale of photosynthesis begins high up in the clouds where the raindrops live. A group of 6 naughty raindrop friends decided to start bouncing on the clouds, even though they have been taught all their life that if they do jump, something terrible could happen. But they decided to do it anyways. Then after they had been bouncing for only a short amount of time, they fell straight through the cloud and were falling super fast through the air. "Ah!" they all shouted with fear because they couldn't see a thing since it was nighttime and only the moon was out. But when they finally came to a stop, they would find that they were on Earth in the grass. After some time of not knowing what to do, one of them by the name of Russ suggests, "Let's just camp out here and we'll find out what to do when the sun comes up." Everyone agrees, so they close their eyes for the night and go to sleep. Although they wake up in the morning to discover that it was still dark. "Where are we? Why is it still dark? Where is the sun?" one shouts in panic. They have soaked through the soil of the ground and were now underground. "Should we look around?" asks another with fear. After some discussion, they decide to wander around to try to figure out where they are. During this journey of trying to find a way home, they meet 6 other friends who have also lost their way. But these friends were not raindrops like them. They were a chemical called carbon dioxide. So they all introduce themselves and then continue walking together to find a way home. "Hey, what's that?" exclaims the raindrop drought, pointing to a circular hole in the ground above them. Then all of a sudden, whoosh! All 6 raindrop friends and all 6 carbon dioxide friends are sucked into this hole and end up combining into one super chemical known as glucose. Now kids, just so we're clear, the hole they were sucked into was the bottom of a plant's stem. And unfortunately, the 6 naughty raindrops and 6 carbon dioxide chemicals who lost their way were never able to return home. But children, this is because the plant then used their energy as one large chemical to provide for itself, so that the plant itself could survive and grow. And then that's the end of our story, concludes Miss Erickson. "Okay, so class," she continues, "when it rains outside, the water coming down from the clouds soaks into the ground and is consumed by a plant. That plant also uses the CO2 chemical, which is short for carbon dioxide, in the air to combine with the water, making a whole new chemical called glucose, which is the plant's food. So technically you can say that plants make their own food by the process of photosynthesis, which allows them to survive and gives them the energy to live, just like we need food to give us energy and allow us to live. Does this all make sense?" Mrs. Erickson concludes. Sadie then shouts, "Wow, Mrs. Erickson, that's so cool! Thank you so much for answering my question." "You're welcome, Sadie. Does everyone understand this process? Does anybody have questions about it?" The whole class responds with praise, having learned about photosynthesis in such an interesting way. Then Mrs. Erickson continued her day as she had planned. "Okay, class, now let's continue where we left off before lunch.